Given the title of my video today, you might be wondering why I'm handing out advice from Warren Buffett and Vilfredo Pareto, who, if you didn't happen to know, was an Italian economist who died nearly exactly a century ago. Why am I doing this on a Flute channel? What does this investing genius and Italian economist have to say that's so relevant to flutists? Well, this of course is relevant to everybody, and I thought the timing recording this video would be really good right now because we're about to start a new school year. I'm about to see all my flute majors for the first time in many months, and I think this is all really great stuff to think about as you're setting new goals for any reason, but a new school year is a great time to evaluate your goals. Most of the advice that I have for you today comes from Warren Buffett, and there's a story behind why he gave out this advice. The story is that he had an employee who was Mike, a pilot who would fly Warren Buffett around. Eventually, Warren Buffett realized that this pilot, Mike, had been working for him for about 10 years, and he approached Mike about it. He said, "I'm not sure that this is your career goal for life. Are you progressing in your career? And if not, I should help you, because if I allow you to be my employee for too long, I'm kind of failing. I need to help you in your career advancement." So this is the advice that he gave Mike. He had him sit down and write out a list of 25 career goals. Just brainstorming, but thinking of the most excellent, important career goals that he could. So Mike sat down and he wrote out his 25 career goals. I've done this exercise a number of times by now, and I find 25 goals is actually quite difficult. That's a lot to come up with really significant, important goals. You cover a lot of ground and a lot of possibilities with a list that's that long. Now, of course, you could adapt this list of career goals in any number of ways. You could look at long-term goals for your entire life, or you could look at your goals for the approaching school year. In this case, for my students, we're going to talk about goals for your time in college, because to me that pretty closely replicates the kinds of things you'd be looking at as career goals. So let's actually try this together. I'm going to put myself back in your place. I'm going to think about a list of goals that I either had when I was first starting college, or things that now with my older brain I look back and think, wouldn't that have been nice if I'd had time in college to do X or Y? So here we go. I'm gonna make my list. I still prefer to write things like this out by hand. It makes me feel more connected to what I'm doing. It makes me remember it better. Now that you have your list of 25 potential goals, the next step is you're going to circle your top 5 goals out of these potential 25. The nice thing here is that when you're making this list, you're not trying to prioritize it from the beginning. You're just brainstorming, you're being careful to write down goals that are serious, that you might really want to pursue, but you're not trying to do number 1, number 2, number 3. That's what you're going to do next. So now we're supposed to circle our top 5. Think about it carefully, take your time. It might take some time. All right, that was surprisingly tough, especially considering that these are hypothetical goals, but I'm still taking them seriously. I have my 5 circled goals here, and I'll show you my finished list with those goals circled. And this is what Warren Buffett had pilot Mike do. But then he said to Mike, "You've identified these 5 goals, you need to focus on them hard." And Mike said, "Yes, I understand. This will really help me if I put a lot of energy into these 5 goals." And then this is the part of the story that tends to really surprise people. Next, Warren Buffett said, "What do you think you should do with the rest of those 20 goals? They're good, important goals. How much energy should you give to the 20 goals that didn't make your top 5? And Mike said, as I think I would probably say, "Well, yes, they are important and they mean something to me. So I guess that I should put most of my efforts into my top 5 goals, but save a little energy and save some time to also work on the other 20 goals. And Warren Buffett said, no, you don't want to give any energy to the goals that are not in your top 5. In fact, cross those 20 off your list and avoid them at all costs. Why do you think he would say that? Pause the video and think about it for a few seconds. Why would he say, even though these are good goals, just avoid them at all costs? And while you still have the video paused, before you come back, why don't you take the time to like my video, subscribe to my channel, maybe leave us a comment about what your goals are for the year or what your thoughts are about this whole process. This is why Warren Buffett wants you to ignore the goals that are not your top 5. He wants you to focus, and the fact that all of these goals are good things can completely destroy your focus. After all, for me in my own career goals, when I write them down, they can easily include a few things like play gigs around town. But when I do that, it might actually prevent me from reaching the goals that I'm more passionate about, even though it's great to be playing gigs. If I play too many nutcrackers, it may prevent me from getting ready to publish my next CD. But that CD means a lot more to me than playing my 600th nutcracker. Those bigger goals will never get done if you don't make room for them. If you don't prioritize your top goals, you never take charge and cause career advancement. Not just career existence, but career advancement is what we want. And if you don't prioritize your top goals, you may never really get to that point of career advancement. I can tell you I've put plenty of opportunities on hold or put them aside in order to focus on what really matters the most to me in my career. And if you feel really bad crossing off some of those lower 20 goals, if you feel like, but I really, really want to do this thing too, just remember that we're prioritizing here, and the point of having goals is to reach them. So if you reach a couple of your goals, then you can reprioritize. You can go back to your list of 25, identify your top 5 goals, and make progress on some of those things that you've put aside in order to really achieve your top 5 goals. So that's the advice from Warren Buffett that I think is really great and I have used a lot of times in my life. However, you can find it on YouTube in other videos, so you may be wondering why I'm bothering to do my own video on it. And the answer is, I have a theory that I've never seen anywhere else, and Warren Buffett's never talked about this in public himself, so we don't really know. So I have this thought to add. It's purely conjecture, it's my own thought. Here it is. If you look at what Warren Buffett tells you to do, pick 5 goals out of your initial 25 that you've written down that could be big major goals for you. What percentage of 25 is 5? Anybody? Anybody know? I'm sure many of you know, but it's 20%. So you're putting aside 80% of your goals and you're focusing on the 20% that you decide is most important. And this is what I think is very interesting. Do any of you know what the 80-20 rule is? It's sometimes called Pareto's principle or the law of the vital few. Wilfredo Pareto is the one behind this 80-20 rule, or Pareto's principle, as it's not surprisingly called, which basically is that 80% of the results in many different situations are produced by 20% of the causes behind them. You can see this principle all over the place if you look for it. Pareto, of course, was looking for it, and he saw various things in his life, like 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people there at the time that he was alive. He also noticed that 20% of the pea pods in his own garden contained 80% of the peas that were produced by his garden. I could give you endless statistics that are out there. 80% of crimes are caused by 20% of criminals. 80% of car accidents are caused by 20% of drivers. Here's my point though with Buffett and Pareto. Buffett is known to be an avid reader. He sets aside 5 to 6 hours every day to read. He wants to continue educating himself so that he can become ever more effective in his life. I have no doubt that Buffett, being a master investor, is fully aware of Pareto, this important Italian economist. I have no doubt that Buffett is fully aware of the 80-20 rule. I think that in his advice to his pilot employee, Buffett was trying to harness the power behind this 80-20 rule as much as he possibly could. He's saying really that in the end, 80% of your results are going to come from 20% of your goals. So you're in a much better position to preemptively, proactively create your own destiny if you step in, take charge, decide what the top 20% of your goals are, and focus on them rather than focusing on every goal that pops into your head at any time and becoming very diffuse in your efforts to meet goals. Warren Buffett is all about focus. If you look at his life, he is extremely focused. He still lives in the first house he ever bought. Every morning for breakfast, he goes to McDonald's on his 5-minute commute to his job, the same commute he's had his whole life. He's trying to help you to narrow in on those really most important goals and focus on them so that you can become truly great at those things, those skills, those accomplishments, those things that will lead you to the greatest success in your career. And for our purposes, the greatest success you can have getting what you really want out of your college years. Now, your assignment for this week, aside from practicing, of course, because that is always an assignment for you, is to take time with this exercise and do it really thoughtfully and carefully. Take your time writing down your 25 goals, then pare it down to your top 5, your top 20%, and decide how you can throw all of your possible efforts into those very specific limited goals. This is how we become focused and specialized in our knowledge. There are so many great generalists out there who know a bit about a lot of things, but to have a really great shot at the best possible career you can have, you want to be a specialist. See you next week.